Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to your questions on political philosophy, on Canada's institutions, on fundamental law, on history, on culture, and all those things that are involved in our effort to build a good life together in this country.
All right. Now I have three questions for you, but they're all related and they all have to do with the Constitution. So I'll ask the first one now. Is the BNA Act, that's the British North America Act of 1867, still valid? In other words, has it ever been revoked? And if it's still valid, does it override the 1982 Constitution Act when there are conflicts?
In the context of that latter question, you'd have to say no. The British North America Act is no longer in force, but most of it was incorporated into the Constitution Act of we have the Constitution Act 1867, the Constitution Act 1982, and together they are the Constitution of Canada. So if you look at our Constitution, you see a lot of the British North America Act still there, but no longer, as it was in 1867, as an act of the British Parliament. And the critical difference is this, that prior to 1982, if we did want to amend our Constitution, we had to work out among ourselves what we wanted done. Then we had to go to the British government and ask the British Parliament to amend the Act. Since 1982, the British Parliament can no longer amend our Constitution. Of course, neither can we. It's all a matter of clumsy backroom deals that if the populace ever finds out, they're as mad as scalded cats, which is a ludicrous way to run our affairs. But that's where we are now. And that, of course, is why our project to fix the Constitution, among other things, would put the people in charge of amending it, as of approving it, because fundamental law should come from the people in a self-governing system, and used to, from Magna Carta and before in our system, until that mess in 1982.
I like that. I like that project. Maybe I'll put the URL on the screen so people can go and check it out, because we still need help to fund that one. Second part of the question, does the BNA Act make a clear distinction between federal and provincial areas of jurisdiction? And if so, what are they?
The answer to that is mostly yes and a bit no.
Mm-hmm.
It does make a distinction. It makes a firm distinction. Not always as clear as it ought to be. And the distinction is also, in my opinion, one of the things that the architects of our Constitution got wrong in 1867, because it assigns a number of powers to the central government and then says basically this list is purely for illustrative purposes. All those powers not expressly allocated to the provinces belong to the federal government. And the federal government has a number of powers that it clearly has to have, conduct of foreign affairs, money, weights and measures, navigation of interprovincial and international waters, all these kinds of things. It makes sense for it to have. And then this being Canada, there are too many of these ludicrous deals. There are things about railroads. Your Constitution shouldn't be specific about railroads. But the provinces do have a significant area reserved to them. And that includes, among other things, most matters dealing with property, which I think in a way is unfortunate, because even if the federal government did guarantee property, it wouldn't stop the provinces from messing with it. But the provincial area of responsibility areas also include education, health, and charity, or in that marvelous 19th century word, eleemosynary institutions. You've got to love eleemosynary. And yet, in the modern system, virtually all social programs are either the responsibility of the federal government or are so controlled by the federal government through the grants that it gives to the provinces with strings attached that the feds have annexed this area of provincial responsibility. I think that's bad policy, and I think it's really contrary to the spirit of the Constitution, even though you have no luck getting a court to try and strike it down.
That's because the federal government has a power to spend, right? And when they can spend in areas of provincial jurisdiction, then they can dictate how that money is going to be used.
That's true, but there is a principle in law that you're forbidden to do indirectly what you cannot do directly. And it seems to me that an argument should have been raised many years ago that by taxing citizens so heavily that the provincial governments needed the money back to provide these services, and then offering the services back with strings attached, or in the case of the federal government, with education, much of it is direct. They have been doing an end run around the provincial jurisdiction, which especially, it was limited because people like Sir John A. Macdonald, though far-seeing in many ways, believed that the United States was unstable and was having its civil war because it was too decentralized. I think this is a preposterous misreading. The United States was having a civil war because of slavery, and we had abolished slavery due to the foresight of people like Simcoe long before. But in any event, they thought they needed a strong central government, and then it proceeded to get stronger and stronger. Ambition has a wolfish appetite.
All right. Third part of this long question on the Constitution, the equalization payments policy. That's part of the 1982 Constitution. In your opinion, is it being properly administered? And before you jump on that one, the formula for this policy could have been changed in 2014, but wasn't. Why not?
Two questions. First of all, no. Equalization is a mess from beginning to end. It is a policy, it's like badly designed social programs for individuals. It rewards bad policy. If a provincial government mishandles its affairs in ways that depress revenue by harming its economy and failing to take advantage of opportunities, including resource development, the other provinces have to run and give them money. And then the money gets clawed back in such ways that going to more sensible policy is often a loser in terms of your financial situation. Moreover, the Constitution, which put this in 1982, who knows why, put it in badly, saying that the federal government's committed to the principle of equalization, but not to the practice of it. It might not be possible for the provinces, if equalization were dramatically scaled back, to go to the courts and say, hey, we want money from our other provinces, beat it out of them and hand it to us. As for the administration of it, the formula is so complicated that virtually nobody understands it, including the politicians. And when an expert panel was convened about 10 years ago to study equalization, they discovered another hidden equalization supplemental program they didn't even know existed. That's how bad it is. But the result of it is to transfer enormous amounts of wealth from those provinces that are doing well to those that are doing badly. Half the money goes to Quebec, and everybody knows, nod, wink, this is not explicit, but everybody knows it better happen, otherwise the nationalists will do the usual blah, 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 blah. But by now, Ontario's been getting equalization. Ontario, yes, it's had some hard times recently, but this is one of the wealthiest jurisdictions ever to have existed in human history. And yet it is a have-not province, which hasn't stopped it from becoming the most indebted subnational entity in the whole world. So everything is wrong with equalization. It ought to be cut back drastically to the point where it is there for provinces that are literally in danger of going bankrupt and otherwise simply doesn't exist. It couldn't be worse than it is today, which I hasten to add is not a challenge for policymakers.
No, because almost, and when you say it couldn't get worse, that's usually what they do, is they try to make it worse. All right, then, thanks for that. Folks, if you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to the page where everything is explained, I think, pretty clearly. Thank you, and see you next time.